Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the official live stream of Daniel and Dr. Joe. Dr. Joe, welcome.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much, Daniel. I'm so glad that we're here now, that we had to troubleshoot those things and we got over them.
Well, this is the exciting part of life, isn't it? A lot of people believe that life without obstacles is better. But I believe in Stoicism, they say the obstacle is the way. And many years ago, a author by the name of Ryan Halliday wrote a really good book called The Obstacle is the Way. And I know that if you're going to have big goals in your life, you're going to have big obstacles. So
That's
why
right.
not make the most of them right now?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because like we've always been plugged in, everything runs smoothly, but then somehow we're just going vice versa. I guess that really gives us a very strong intro to our topic today about fear in general, how to face those obstacles. I guess we just had a bit of a warm-up session before our audience joined in. Hi, Megs, and hi, Claire. Good to see you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hi, Hamide. Appreciate you. So I guess we're really demonstrate what we're on about here, Daniel. Hey.
Well, you know, the average person gives up on their goals before their first attempt. And
Yes.
I have been doing Facebook Lives and live streams all the way back to 2016. And
Yep.
nothing is easy. Everything is hard before it's easy. And just once you think you've mastered it, they move the goalpost and they change it. And you got to
Yeah.
learn something new. And I believe that a lot of people, when it comes to fear, they fear change. And even as we talk about the fear of rejection today, people have to change, but they fear the change and they fear, will people accept me if I make this change? And I think it's just a hot topic for us today, Joe.
I believe it's a hot topic, and believe it or not, it's been happening with me. I was just talking about this on the news. I was asked a couple of questions about the skill sets that the people would require to have in 2021 to battle their employment and really enhance their chances of getting employed. And somehow we ended up talking about, the fear of change and fear of rejection, all that stuff, and all these principles that a lot of us have grown up with it. You're too old to learn, and all that stuff, and how we have taken those as sort of like unquestioned parameters, that that's it, as if it's said by God or something. And unfortunately, COVID-19 doesn't really take that on board, and that's the funny part, that we really have to move in that direction. And I do have few spicy things to add to the table, so this live is going to be very, very different. So hold your breath.
Breathe in. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. And I'd like to get some feedback. So what I wanted to do is I'm going to ask you a question, and then I want you to share your answers up in the chat box below. So my question is, have you ever wanted to go and introduce yourself to somebody, but you didn't do it because you had a fear of rejection? If you've had that experience, I want you to type yes in the chat box, because I've also had that experience before. And having that one fear held me back. So let me ask you, Joe, has there been a time in the past when you've wanted to introduce yourself to somebody, but you didn't do it because you had a fear of rejection?
In fact, to be honest, and I'm not really talking rubbish here, but with all honesty, I can't remember how many times. It is that frequent and that many times. I know that some of our people here that are joining us, hello, Peter, good to see you, and Claire, Hamide, Constantinos, I'm not sure if I'm saying the name right. You'll probably be surprised if you've been following me, seeing my videos, but honestly, and I'm not lying to you, I've had many, 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 many times where that has actually happened to me, Megs, as well, that, I was very shy and I could not move forward and talk to someone, irrelevant of what the scenario was, just because of that fear. But I want to add a little bit more to your question, Dan, where we can add an extra bit. I want to work on the parameter for a second, because this is going to really make a difference. When we say, that question, have you ever had fear in general, that you're just feeling rejected? When I say the feel of rejection, what normally comes to your mind most of the time? That's my question. So fear of rejection, what is the first picture visually that comes to your brain when I say fear of rejection?
The first one is, for me, we'll start with the fun one, is my wife asking for a new handbag. And so instead of asking me and me saying no, she just orders it and it shows up anyway. But for me, Joe, it's that picture of was for when I was in real estate. I'm walking down the street. I'm in my suit. It's a hot November's day in 1999, and I've got a knock on a door. And in my mind, I'm imagining somebody saying no, and I haven't even got to the front door yet. And that's a memory from the past, and it's one that was really held me back for many years. So, truth mean, they're my two pictures. What about yours?
I'm just seeing here some of the comments here. We've got from Konstantinos, fear of rejection or fear of loneliness. This is a good thing. Most of the time, from my experience, then the people get it in association with love and dating. Fear of rejection, you want to say something and then you can't say it because you're afraid that the person is going to say no or going to reject you in some way or form, which I haven't really seen many answers here anticipating this. Good afternoon, Tracy. Thank you so much for tuning in from Malaysia. Bore! Love Malaysia. And what I want to share today with you, and Daniel, I think you're going to back me on that one, that the fear of rejection is actually a very, very open context. It's not just about love and dating. There's that fear of rejection, like Daniel expressed his story where he was thinking about sales and the people going to reject him. There's also fear of rejection for applying to his job. I've had a fear of rejection, which was quite recent in the last few years of my life when I already started to develop. And I was thinking I'm not really good enough to apply for senior government positions. So this is another level for the fear of rejection. And I was like, oh my God, I can't really apply. I don't think, people work for the government. They're really strong. They're more qualified than me. It was all inside my head. And that was the breaking moment where I actually decided to apply for that job. And the good news were I actually got the job. So this is just on a quick, spicy note here. I've got Megs here saying fear to be abandoned.
Interesting.
So I guess she's on the same thing. I'm just gonna move this one here slightly.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you this question. If you have a fear of rejection, how would you like to be able to feel more confident when meeting new people? Would you like that? And if you would, make sure you type in yes in the comment. What's a comment box? The comment box below. And we're going to give you some great ideas. So over to you, Joe. I'm going to pass it over to you. And Hamid has just shared with us, Dan, my answer to your question is yes. But for me, it was not the fear of rejection by itself. It was more about the consequences of rejection that annoyed me. Wonderful.
Right.
Well, I'll pass it over to you, Joe, to expand.
Yes, I didn't know that you speak French then, because comments is comments in French. No, I'm just really making this up. I'm just mucking around.
I was channeling.
But yes, absolutely channeling. And the funny part here is then when we talk about fear of rejection, I've worked with a lot of people that I have helped them to break through that. I personally would like to start with a story, because at times, guys, all it is that you need to think about yourself for a moment, take a deep breath, and really conceptualize your whole entire life. So I will tell you a situation that has happened to me. This is a real story with me personally, not anybody else's. And I'll tell you that real story that has happened to me, and I want you to extract what are the lessons learned from that story in the comments here, if you are watching with us now, or if you are on the live replay. Here's the story, and this is real story. I was wearing a t-shirt like what I'm wearing now, but it was a bit more extravagant, okay? And I was at a social event then, and there was this lady that came to me. She's like, oh my God, you're such a nice guy, but that t-shirt you're wearing is absolutely terrible. I took the comment, and I didn't really feel well, and I felt rejected. I felt like I'm hopeless and I'm useless and I don't know how to wear, and I'm wearing daggy clothes, and probably being an Arab adds to it. I really doubted myself. I had a very, very terrible night that night. I went home really thinking, funny enough, this has passed, no change on my life, just had a bad one and probably a start of a bad day the next day. But moved on from here. This situation happened again, and for some reason I didn't get rid of that t-shirt. It's like I was reluctant. It was meant to be there for a reason. And I was in another social event. and I was wearing the same t-shirt again. And for some reason, another lady, not like the first one, but she is someone new, that said the same comment. But I want you closely to listen to my answer this time. The first one, I wasn't Joe that you know today. The second one, I am Joe, the one that you know today. And I want you to listen closely to the difference. T-shirt is the same body is wearing it. Two different people saying almost the same comment. The reaction is very different. This is what I told the lady word for word. I told her, "Oh, you are so amazing. I would love to host you on my program." She's like, "Oh, you have a program?" I said, "Yes. Would love to host you. Do you mind if I can host you?" She's like, "What's your program name?" I said, "The program is called Your Opinion Doesn't Matter." Now, think about this. She was rude to me, and I was not really rude in my opinion. It was more descripting a fact that your opinion doesn't. I didn't ask for your opinion. And when she took that remark, she withdrawn and she was like, she was hit. And to be honest to you, to me, I had absolutely no effect whatsoever from her remarks. So now I look at myself before and after, when I was wearing that same t-shirt, and how I let that comment go through to my heart, affect my whole entire life, my whole entire day, doubt myself at night and doubt myself the next day, versus the second one that it was just more of a humor, which I actually laughed. Like I made that lame joke about it. And until she gathered that I was being sarcastic and mucking around, I started laughing at it. Like I don't mean to insult people. I was just responsive in the same tone and pitch, and I wanted to let her know that I'm mucking around. Like I didn't ask about your opinion, right? And that's the funny part, is how I reacted from the first time versus to the second time. For us to be able to conceptualize this and act on this, this is going to make a big difference in the way we reform and reshape our fear of rejection in whatever type the rejection is coming from: love, relationships, or work, etc. Now, I've got Claire here saying a very nice comment. She's saying, "I am much better now, but I used to be stalled by fear. It was not the outcome I was fearful of, but the association with my memories of a time when I had such little self belief. Why would anyone be interested in speaking to me? I was really shy, believe it or not." I will have to believe it, Claire, because if I have to look at myself, I was probably, in my own view, my confidence was minus 30, and everybody else's confidence who believe that they have no confidence were at level zero at least. I was in the minus. So definitely believe you. And I know those people that come from that very shy, etc., when they break through like yourself, they really make a strong breakthrough. Got Hamida here saying, "Great, stop caring so much about what others think." Look, Hamida, that came with me very, very natural. The second one, I like to use sense of humor. And it took a while to register with that lady until she gathered that I'm actually mucking around. There's no show called Your Opinion Doesn't Matter, until she gathered my dry sense of humor or sarcasm, etc. It does take time, and I can see that Daniel here is just coming back still with the laugh. So I'm assuming he was laughing under the desk and on the floor rolling.
I, I thought you were giving her an embedded command.
I didn't go that far yet.
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 Temporal language, my friend. Yet.
Yes, so we're coming, and I said this story is the first time I actually say online, so I wanted to make it exclusive to you amazing people that are watching us now, and also for those people that are going to watch us on the live replay. If you get to know my personality, I am kind of funny guy. Maybe I'm not showing that much in the videos, but we'll be coming to show that side a bit more. But I'm actually a very kind of fun guy. I like to muck around. And when you see the people reaction, I've had the team, Daniel, telling me that we wish that we have the camera operating all the time, because when you make fun of people and you just make fun of yourself at times, it's actually really funny. And they said you should go into a stand-up comedy, or you're quick on your feet, you're natural. And I was like, I don't want to be recognized by the comedian. I didn't study that. This is something that comes to me, just comes kind of natural, just to break, to make sure that we are doing edutainment, because the market these days, they want to be educated, but they don't want it to be boring. And we understand that it has to be interesting for us to remember.
Absolutely.
What's your most embarrassing moment before the transformation, after the transformation then?
Well, I was cabin crew, and when you're on a flight, any flight, what happens is the customer's board through normally we call it the L1 or the L2 door, depending on what type of aircraft you're on. And I always had a belief that the strangest customers would announce themselves to you. The person who was going to create the problem on the flight would announce themselves.
Yes.
So I was down the back of the aircraft, and this lady came down to the back of the aircraft, and she walked into the galley, and she started to dance in the galley. And I knew this was the woman. I knew this was the nutter of the flight. I knew this was the wild one. And anyway, we're doing our preparation. She was talking to us. She went back to her seat. The aircraft took off. We did the service. And after the service, she came back into the galley for a drink. And she started to dance. So I thought, well, if she's going to dance, I'm going to have a dance-off with her. And I did a dance-off, and I spun around like Michael Jackson, and I tried to do the splits on the floor. And I burst the seam of my pants open at 40,000 feet. And at 40,000 feet, everybody saw my red undies. And then I had to serve 400 people for the next 6 hours with my bum hanging out the back of my pants. And I couldn't do anything about it. There was no sewing kit. There was no needles. There was nothing. There was just my bottom in my red undies. So that was one example. But one of the things for me, Joe, is that I love to go to trainings. I love education. Education is really important for me, learning new ideas, learning new ways to overcome life's challenges. And one of the ways that I've feared rejection over the years is I've gone to events and the trainer's been on stage and the audience has been in the audience, and I've wanted to ask a question. And I've wanted to put my hand up, and the self-talk starts to begin. Daniel, you've got a question. It's a really good question. You should put your hand up. And I want to put my hand up, but the arm doesn't go up. And I say to myself, it's okay. It's a good question. And then there's this little devil on the other shoulder and says, Daniel, it's a stupid question. What if you ask and it's one of these answers that you should just know? And I don't want to ask the question, and I'm sitting there for a day. I'm sitting there for 2 days and 3 days. And some of those trainings I've been in 18-day trainings, and I get to the end and I still haven't put up my hand. And what I feel inside of me is I have this fear of this rejection, that I'm going to ask this question and they're going to say, that's a stupid question. I know they're not going to. I know they're going to say it's a good question, but the feeling and the emotion kicks in. Then I start to look around and think, what if other people think I'm stupid? I'm supposed to be successful. What if they think I'm unsuccessful? And so what I do is I put my hands under my underarms and I stop myself from putting my hands up. And that's something that's held me back, but it's something that I've worked on. And it was about asking questions and getting answers. And by not doing that, it set me back so many years. So I want to hear from you, ladies and gentlemen. Have you had that experience? Did it happen to you at school? You put your hands under your underarms and you don't want to ask a question because you don't want to look stupid and be rejected in your mind by your peers. What about you?
I've had the same experience as well, Dan, when I was at school. Obviously, before I transform to the person I am today. But to be honest, that Red Undies story is going to really stick with me, because I think you should have just.
It was not a G-string.
Well, you should have just gone into the next level of, there will be a stripping entertainment show on the side here from the air crew for free for you guys, for the business class and the first class. I've had scenarios like this. And I want to share with our audience, and I can see here Sandra. Thank you, Sandra. She's sharing with us that the story was really sad. And fear of rejection when it comes to love, work, or anything. I don't know if anybody knows about numbers or likes numbers. I don't like numbers, but I had to somehow say something and try to work them out. And Claire is saying that it's like her when it's like it wasn't me when I look back. And she has visions. Never spoke at school. That's a very long time. I kind of spoke only a few times at school, Claire. So for me, I can relate to your experience, but my voice was very, very, very low because I couldn't. I was forcing myself, like with the arm thing, like Daniel said. But I want to look at the numbers game. And here's the thing. I'll tell you a little story how I arrived at the numbers. There was a group of people that I have met. They told me their story, and their story was not any different than mine. They were very shy and they became so confident and so on and so forth. So I thought to myself, all right. So how did you guys like manage? And they were talking about mainly dating. So they said that the most difficult thing for them was that first intimate kiss. After this, everything seems to roll fine. And I said, well, fear of rejection, every time they want to go for it, they feel like, oh, maybe it's not the right time, we're not ready yet, etc. And the funny part is when they attempted this, they used that model, which is how I extracted my number. They said, if we assume everything is 50-50, we might get a yes, we might get a no. So we're going to go with either way. If we get a yes, it's a yes. If we get a no, it's a no, 50-50. Then when they trialed that, their actual percentage was much higher than the 50-50. Most of the time, or 80-90% of the time, they're getting the yes that they never thought. At their worst calculation, it was 50-50. But the truth of the matter is life served them in reality, it was 90-10. So I worked from that model to use my 50-50 methodology. It's not necessarily scientifically accurate, but it helps someone to take a stance and to take a step forward. This is basically what the 50-50 does from your side. So now, if there's anybody that is going to something, always ask yourself, 50-50. If we haven't made that step forward, like the situations we discussed with Dan and Claire, etc., we might miss on the 50-50 because we haven't actually stepped that step forward. But if we did step it, we got to know we've got the 50%. To respond to Hamida's one before, that she was more concerned about the consequences of the rejection, more so the rejection itself. Here's another angle for that one. Majority of the time, those consequences that you're building in your own head, Hamide, may not necessarily be the reality. And again, we go back to the story like the 50-50 thing. If they attempted, they get a yes or no, it's a 50-50, but the reality served them at 90. So you're afraid or concerned about the consequences of that rejection. This may just well be alive in your head. And if you haven't seen those people, I learned something when I was doing my postgraduate studies. This is something I have learned. And I thought that I learned how to study, etc. But when I was doing my postgrad, I actually still learned something new. And it was not about the science or the knowledge I'm actually learning. It was more about the tactic to arrive at excellence, because excellence is for me. When I get high distinction, I want to get it for me. It has nothing to do with the people. It's a challenge I am setting. I'm comparing myself yesterday versus myself today, not with anybody else's. So I realized one thing, that I was a lot more deeper and analytical more than majority of the people that I have met. And the assignments and the stuff that I was doing in my postgrad and the preparation, etc., and the discussion, it was at a greater depth where the lectures themselves were not really going to that depth. So basically, without walking into the academia part, I know it's not the best examples to entice people, but the summary of it is, before I was doing, let's say, 80 hours of work to get high distinction, when I realized that the consequences that are alive in my head, not necessarily alive in reality, I started to do 25 hours and arrive at the same result, which means I saved myself 65 hours. Right? This is essentially what it is. Is it 65? Did I say 80? 80? Yeah, 55. If that's the case, 25. See, this is how good I am in numbers. Can't even add 85 and 55.
Do you have a doctorate in numbers?
No, thank God. Otherwise, it certainly would not be going well with me.
It's interesting, these fears of rejection. Everybody has their own experience of a fear of rejection. And sometimes you're aware of it and sometimes you're not. And with fear of rejection, you first of all have to increase that level of self-awareness. And one of the studies I was reviewing recently, Joe, shows that 95% of the population believe that they're self-aware. But in reality, they're not aware. Only about 10 to 15% of the population is aware. And that's nothing to be embarrassed about. They're just the numbers in that realm. But what you've got to do is you've got to bring this awareness back. You've got to have this awareness of this fear. And it's only once you become aware of your fear that you can actually start to regulate it.
Absolutely.
So how do you know you have this fear? Well, you may not feel it. A lot of people won't feel it because they live detached from their body. But you might see that you're avoiding certain things. And so when I was in real estate, I'd walk down the street, the house would be there, and then you'd say to yourself, I need to knock on this door. But all of a sudden you find yourself drifting back towards your car. And you're going, oh, it's really hot. And I'm going to go have a rest for a while. Then later on, I'll do it. And you go into this avoidance behavior. And so you may find that a lead has come into your business and you've done all this hard work in lead generation. You've done your Facebook ads. You've put your funnels together. You've got your lead pages together. And all of a sudden, after spending thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours of time, you get this lead in your inbox and it sits there. Now, the numbers, because I know you're good at numbers, Joe, is that if you pick up a lead, a web lead, and you call that web lead within 5 minutes, you're 90% more likely to close the deal just because you respond in 5 minutes.
Of course.
But what happens is people procrastinate and they wait and they say, I'm just going to have a cup of coffee. I'm just going to go to the bathroom. And they start to go into avoidance behavior. So if you see this happening in your life, maybe it's a lead. Maybe you've been introduced to somebody and the introduction's sitting there in the email box and it's there for a day, it's there for a week, and by the end of the month, you might not be having a fear of rejection, ladies and gentlemen. You're probably feeling guilt. And so sometimes these fears of rejection might show up as guilt. You might be aware of the guilt and not aware of the fear of rejection. And so once you bring it back into your awareness, it's easy to deal with. I have a very good friend, Joe. He says, how can a man without a brain earn more money than a brain surgeon? That's what he tells me. I said,
Okay.
are you talking to me or are you talking about you? And he said to me, he said, Daniel, it's not what you know that hurts you. It's what you don't know. So sometimes you've just got to have a look at your behaviors because our thoughts, there's always a thought that precedes the feeling, and it's the feeling that determines the actions you do or don't take. You might have about 90,000 thoughts a day, and they produce your feelings. You might not be picking up on the feelings because you're detached from your feelings, but you can always look at your lack of behaviors. The lack of a behavior is an avoidance as well. So many different ways to become aware of it.
Absolutely. And adding to that, Dan, is also what's the next step to raise that awareness and then actually change that behavior. And I got Hamide is saying here, well said, Doc. So how can we really ignore the negative self-talk of the possible consequences? This is a brilliant question, and I would love to answer it real quick here, Hamide. That part of you tackling that self-talk that is negative is by reflecting back on your history, such as, okay, so when that happened before, what did happen then? I was thinking 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to happen, but what really happened was 5, 6, 7, 8. By reinforcing that concept to raise your awareness and become consciously aware that whatever is going through your mind right now is not necessarily going to be reality. You only need to use your previous reality as a reference point to reinforce your present and future points. This is the best solution to get hold of this. And another thing to add as well, and share this with you then, is how I got the repetition. I'm pretty sure I told you before, but for our viewers here that maybe first time to see me or just watching live, I'm going to share it with you. Got this repetition. This is the same guy talking to you here that had no confidence and was doing a lot of preparation for the first time I'm going to lecture, and I forgot everything. Now I have the repetition that on any event, it doesn't matter what the size is, if there's anything goes sideways, they can call me on the spot and I'm happy to just turn up ready to roll, and I will not blink. How did I arrive from here? They actually shared some photos with you then about one of those events that happened in Fiji. Maybe you can show some pictures as well. And this was a conference for people that are not necessarily any people. They are very special people. They are directors, human resources, managing directors. They're senior in whatever they do. And They said that we really need you. We are very sorry. We were meant to communicate earlier. It was only a couple of days before the event. I did not prepare anything until the very last night when I arrived there, and I actually gave them the PowerPoint slides and realized that the PowerPoint slides were not basically sharing the same aspect ratio that they were prepared before. So we had to do some tweaking up until 11 or 12. I didn't care about the PowerPoint slides for me. I know the content, but it was more for them to actually conceptualize and have that something at the back. So if I looked at the fear of rejection saying, hey, it's probably easier to say, you haven't told me before. Sorry, I wasn't aware. I don't think I'm going to be ready. The situation wouldn't have turned exactly as it is. Funny part is, they actually put me at the front, and I started as the first speaker. And the compliments I have gotten from that, and saying that I set the tone for the conference for the 2 days really high, that everybody will be struggling to maintain. Moral of the story here, this is not a show-off story, you know my style. The moral of the story is, I could have chosen an easier pathway, but I actually took the harder pathway, and look at what just happened. I actually had no anticipation of what the result would be. Unlike Hamida's scenario where she said that she's, how can we stop that self-negative talk kind of thing. I had no absolute result in my head. I said, I'm going to turn up to the conference, I'm going to participate, and let whatever happens happen, because I'm going to speak from my heart, and this is also an area of expertise for me. So let's go. And I've got here Morna. Hello, good to see you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Peter agreed, compare ourselves to who we were yesterday, not who someone else is today. So I'm breaking through to did my first live. Well done. This is other picture here. Oh, thank you then. This is another picture. These guys are senior managers for the central bank. The guy right behind me in the blue shirt, he is the CEO of the Salvation Army in Africa. Basically, this is a very intimate group. Again, I want to tell you a little story about this photo. So I am from Africa. I'm Egyptian. And I have a problem with going to Africa and diving deep to Africa for one reason only. I don't tolerate the heat well. That's my only issue. You're going to tell me, come on, Joe, we live in 2000, almost 21. What heat are you talking about? We have air conditions. That those countries, air conditions can be off, can be a problem, and I can collapse. I can actually faint if I am in a very heat or a very high temperature climate for a while. I will get some signs and then I'll collapse. So bottom line is, whenever I was getting offered work of these intimate workshops with senior managers and so on in those countries, I have been saying no to Africa for over 8 years. The picture that you've seen here, this is after the CEO of the company called me, and there's numerous calls from people that I love and admire and respect and look up to. And they kind of begged me, and I said, look, my problem with Africa, I love people, I love to work with people, but I can't put myself in a hazardous environment if there's something wrong with the aircon or whatever it is. And here's the funny part. After their begging, let's say, I accepted. And I went to Africa. I had the best experience in few countries in Africa, because our programs, they go for a week. So we go 1 week here, then we go weekend off, and then the next week in the next country, and so on. So I actually spent quite few weeks in Africa, but each country 1 week only, or Monday to Friday. But I want to tell you about the experience real quick here. So what happened was, in Kenya, everything was great. This picture is from Ghana. This is not Kenya. In Kenya, everything was great. Aircon was fine. People are amazing. Kind of similar character. Those ones here, you can see here, there's a swimming pool right next to me. With that crew, the hall that we've had and the conference room, the aircon blown off. And there was no aircon, and I had to request fans, get onto the phone to the company. They had an electrical problem, get some ice and put ice packs in front of the fan. It was really trouble. It's like I was concerned and I was scared that something like this potentially may happen. And guess what? It happened. By the way, we were in 5-star hotels. We were in Movenpick. So it's not about us taking like a cheaper hotel. We took reasonable measures, but hey, things can happen. Anyway, good news, I survived. But we are on the topic of the fear of rejection, it was very easy for me to just reject. But I was concerned that if I keep rejecting, which I have been for a few years now, there's very senior people from the company called me and said, hey, we have a problem. We really need your help and blah, blah. And I said, if I tell them no, they probably wouldn't really favor me anymore. And I started to think from different angles. Hence why I then accepted taking the risk. And I was completely crazy when I realized this is happening to the aircon in Ghana, and I lost the plot, and I told them I'm going to cancel the program. And they said, well, who's going to bear the consequences of canceling the program? You know, these people are spending up on 150K for this program. Who's going to bear those consequences? And I was like, well, I'm not going to jeopardize. And it was, you know, I don't want to go through it, but it was really a ruckus. But the moral of the story here that I take from my side is that fear of rejection really introduced me to some people. When I took it from that angle, it was actually positive in that sense. It drove me. So yes, fear of rejection is not necessarily a good thing, but at times, if you're in a particular circumstances, it can drive you towards success. And Daniel, you can tell us, what do you take from that story? I know you always look deep.
Well, I like to look deep, and now I'm looking deep into my watch first and foremost because I've got a call coming up in 15 seconds. But what I've learned here is that you've got to get out of your comfort zone, and you have to face rejection. You've got to move out of your comfort zone, and you've got to do something different. And if you're prepared to do something different, you're going to get a different result. And that's what successful people do. They move from success to success by moving out of their comfort zone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. It's been a true pleasure. We're going to continue this topic because I think this is a very important topic. So, Lee, Learn, Dr. Joe, may we explore possibilities after this? Absolutely. We'll get Dr. Joe to reach out to you personally. Morna, thank you for joining us. Fear of rejection, take it positively, and can drive you to success. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to give you a round of applause because you've done the hard work. And we'll see you next Monday, 3 p.m. Taiwan and 6 p.m. in Sydney. Dr. Joe, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful day. Ciao for now.
Ciao.